Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first panel of today. How can China-EU partnerships accelerate a transition to global sustainability? It's my pleasure to introduce a panel of quite exceptional global leaders from both Europe and China. First, Ambassador Xiao Junzheng, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the People's Republic of China to the Hellenic Republic, based in Athens. Professor Nektarios Tavernarakis is the chairman of the Board of Directors, Foundation for Research and Technology, based in Crete, known as FORTH in English, or ITA, I believe, in Greek. Wang is the Director of Overseas Cooperation at the National Innovation Center par excellence, based in Shanghai. Ms. Inge Neven is the Chief Executive Officer of WAITRO, an independent research organization in the Flanders region of Belgium. And Professor Zhinqin is professor at Tsinghua University's School of Social Sciences, Department of International Relations. And among his many responsibilities, he's vice president of the Research Center for China-EU Relations. I'm Paul Burrows, Secretary-General of WAITRO, the World Association of Industrial and Technological Research Organizations. It's a non-profit founded by UNIDO in 1970 and continuously running since. You can find out about us at waitro.org online. But since time is short, and the panel title, I believe, is self-explanatory, I don't want to waste time by giving you a long introduction. And so instead, I'd like to immediately hand over to the ambassador to set the scene and ask you, Ambassador, what major contributions has China made to global sustainable development, and what preferential policies do the Chinese government provide to promote China-EU partnerships in sustainable development? Please.
Okay. Ancient China made important contribution to the world science and technology progress. It was the spread of Chinese papermaking and printing techniques to the West that created the conditions for the Renaissance. Thanks to the invention of the Chinese compass, the age of discovery began, which also paved the way for the Enlightenment. Now, China is experiencing unprecedented wave of innovation. So by developing the agricultural biotechnology, China successfully fed its 1.4 billion people. With the help of science and technology, more than 100 million peoples from the rural China lifted themselves out of poverty. In response to the global challenge, China has completed more than half of its emission reduction work. Only 4 G20 economies, China included, are keeping up with their schedules of emission reduction. Sustainable development cooperation now has become a new engine for the China-EU ties. For example, Germany cooperates with China in R&D projects of electric vehicles and has established joint laboratories in Beijing and Shanghai. France has established a Sino-French ecological park in Chengdu with focus on high-end equipment manufacturing. The Netherlands is exploring cooperation opportunities with Chinese companies in the fields of hydrogen energy and fuel cells. Norway and Belgium have also carried out hydrogen energy cooperation with the Chinese partners. China has launched the International Science and Technology Initiative, under which a global scientific research fund will be set up. I hope this fund could facilitate the China-EU projects on sustainable cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think it's easy to forget sometimes that if one takes a broad view of history, 3,000 years rather than the last 100, Chinese innovation is really nothing new, and China has been a global innovation leader for the vast majority of that 3,000 years. So the capacity and will for cooperation are clearly there. I'd like to move to Ms. Neven. What are some of the most promising areas that you see for collaboration between Chinese and EU research organizations, and what significant challenges does each region face?
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. I think if we look at the situation, we both have clear targets. China has established targets to reach the carbon peak in 2030 and to be carbon neutral in 2060. In Europe, we have the targets fixed to be carbon neutral in 2050. So the targets are clear. I think it's a very important step. And so we also are collaborating and moving on to get to these targets. They're quite challenging. And we also see that certainly also in Europe, we also have to find economic viable solutions at this moment. A lot of innovation still has to be done. And I also think that we both are, China and Europe, we're both investigating and doing a lot of innovation and research, but we also can learn a lot from each other. A few examples, we're working together from our organization together with also Chinese organizations. For example, on district heating, we're working with a Chinese company and we're implementing at this moment AI models that really can shave off the peak demands of energy for the building infrastructure. And this is very interesting for us in Europe because the Chinese districts are much bigger than we know in Europe. So we also can mutually learn from each other and develop these models jointly. We're also doing research together with a research organization in China on geothermal energy, and it's single well geothermal energy. We already have a lot of things ongoing in Belgium on deep well geothermal energy, but with 2 wells. And now we're exploring jointly how we can take advantage of the knowledge we both have to see how to make happen this new technology. This is on the energy part. I think it's very important there indeed to look on how we can set up more collaboration. Also on the environmental part, also very crucial element of this. And there we also have already long established collaborations, for example, on air quality, where we have a team working in Beijing and has been implementing air quality monitoring and action system for 64 cities in China, and in which we also established also much better air quality in the whole of a lot of cities in China. And again, it also helps to take these lessons and to bring them also back to Europe. We've been doing this before in Europe. It has been handed over to China, where there was also a big air quality problem, and now we're taking it also back for other applications in Europe. So I think this mutual collaboration with everybody's own insights and strengths and also local conditions really make us very strong to collaborate on these issues, which are, of course, common and global, because nature doesn't have any borders. So we also have to look at this from a global perspective.
Thank you, Inge. Professor Tavernarakis, as the local insight, what do you see as the opportunities for collaboration between EU and China?
So I would like to comment on 2 levels. First is the European level and then the national level here in Greece, what we are doing. So at the European level, as I'm sure you know already, Europe has been aligning with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And actually, in the framework of Horizon Europe, FP9, the current program that is running, there are concrete missions that have been established within Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe that address these challenges. Some of them have been mentioned already by the previous participants in the panel. For example, climate change, sustainable mobility. But there are also other sectors that have not been explored that much, such as, for example, the biotech sector, biomedical collaborations. Europe has made it a priority to battle cancer, for example. This is one of the main missions that is ongoing within Horizon Europe at the moment. So there is, I think, a lot of scope in collaborating there. In addition to the missions program of Horizon Europe, the EU has set up a pan-European innovation ecosystem that is run by the EIT, the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. And there we have the so-called knowledge and innovation communities that have been created and are run throughout Europe, many of them addressing issues of mutual interest. For example, climate change, clean energy, raw materials availability, food security, health, and others. So again, in that context, there is a lot of room for collaboration. Now, coming closer to home, coming closer to to Greece. As you know, I'm sure, and colleagues from China also know, there was a bilateral collaboration program between our two countries a few years back. It really fostered innovation and research collaborations between both researchers at the individual level, so bottom-up, but also top-down, including universities in China, research centers and universities in Greece. This has been very successful. I think there is a lot of scope in re-establishing, reinstating such programs of cooperation at the research and development level.
Thank you, Professor. So a lot of opportunities, but I'd like to ask Professor Xu, what do you see as the challenges in your role in international relations from the Chinese and EU perspective?
Okay, thank you. I think that both China and EU are facing the challenges for the green economy. So first we talk about the challenge for China. I think for China the first one is China is in the different transitional stages. As we know, China is progressing towards its carbon peak by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060. This aligns with its national strategy and also the Paris Agreement's requirements. Yeah. So, and this ambition is marks a very pivotal step. But many European countries, they have achieved their carbon peak around the early 1990s. So this discrepancy underscores the diverse green development levels and the challenge between China and EU when transitioning into the green economies. For China, the road is longer and tougher. For example, coal is still very, very important for China's energy security, making up about 56% of China's energy supply as of 2020. And to the west, this is still a lot. But China has in fact made much progress in the last decades. It's tried to reduce coal from 72% to just barely half of the energy mix in just 15 years. So, further reducing coal usage and replacing it with the green energy is very, very critical in China's plan. But China still grapples with ensuring its energy security while managing the reduction. And the first challenge for China is the geopolitical tensions. As you know, geopolitical issues such as technology exchange and exchange barriers and dependence reduction strategies affect global cooperation. For example, concerns over competitive advantages can lead to protected trade policies, such as EU's recent scrutiny of Chinese electrical vehicles. This dynamic can hinder global markets from benefiting from China's advancements in renewable energy and complicate international trade relations in the green technology sector. By the way, it should be noted that although market shares of Chinese electrical vehicles is rising in Europe, but the best estimates suggest that they may reach 2 million vehicles by 2030. So Germany's Volkswagen sold over 3 million cars in China in 2019 alone, while some other car companies like Audi, Mercedes-Benz, and Volkswagen altogether sold more than 5 million vehicles that year. So it is not entirely to accuse China's car development when Chinese open it up to Europeans' cars. And the third is the perception and the mutual trust. As we know, in 2019, the EU tried to orient its perception for China. As China always tried to regard the EU as its cooperating partner, but the EU tries, based on the partner, and also try to add the systemic rival. So I think this, especially in the green areas, so the European Union is skeptical to challenge the initiative, while China, for example, while some European countries focus China's continued use of coal, but they may overlook the substantial strides China made in the past few years. For instance, in China, we have installed the capacity of renewable energy in China has surpassed 1 billion kilowatts, representing 45% of China's total capacity. Moreover, China also has made contributions to the green economy, extending its borders, like in Kenya, Carissa. So China tried to help us build its green power plant, which benefits thousands of families and businesses. Yeah, and China's significant role in supplying solar energy technology made its contribution to the green economy. Second, let's try to look at the challenge for EU. So I think the first challenge for EU is high dependency on imports for energy. The EU's energy supplies heavily relies on oil and natural gas, which makes the transition into green economy more challenging, especially in the context of Russian and Ukraine crisis. I think this makes its energy problem more serious. The second is balancing economic growth and the green transition. I think, as we can see from the French peasants, yes, they are taking the streets. This is also relating to the green policy of the EU. And the third is external influence and standards enforcement, while the EU is adopting measures like the carbon border adjustment mechanism to enforce green standards globally. I think they will complicate the relations between its environmental goals and also the trade partners like China. And the last is the technology and resource gaps. Despite EU is at the front of green technology, but in certain segments, it still has lag behind China, like the electrical vehicles production. And also, this is the concern about the sourcing of raw materials, just like the EU Parliament just passed the laws about its critical raw resources. I think this is also the challenge for its future green economy. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Xiao. I just wanted to give a chance for the ambassador. We've heard particularly on the electric vehicle question. As a diplomat, how do you see the competitive landscape? A brief comment, please.
Thank you. Some people are trying to hype the idea of Sinophobia. Their fear and suspicion of China makes them believe that China's progress in technology have weakened Europeans' competitiveness, and they forcefully advocate for the restriction and scrutiny of Chinese high-tech products. This kind of irrational opinion hindered healthy competition. To cover articles published by The Economist magazine represent this argument. In 2013, the cover was with the headline, "The World's Most Polluter," portraying China's carbon emission as the global threat. And in the year of 2024, the cover now is with the headline, "China's EV Onslaught," indicating that the new threat is China's leading position in the green technology. I have to say the claim actually couldn't be more preposterous. The popularity of China's EV is a result of the free market choice. Relevant trade restrictions are bound to be a boomerang, ultimately hitting European consumers and Europe's efforts to reduce emission. Wind power products are another China's green products well received in the European market. It is because of the efforts of China that the cost of onshore and offshore wind power installation dropped 35% and 41% respectively. So more than 400 manufacturers, research institutions, associations in Europe opposed imposing trade barriers on green energy sectors because they are fully aware that the application of technology requires a huge market like China and the technological iteration. They are also fully aware that only by participating the fierce competition in Chinese market can the European high-tech companies maintain their global competitiveness. China and the EU are each other's important trading partners, and both are committed to the green transformation. So I think there should be no obstacle to the sustainable development cooperation between us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I don't have time to editorialize too much, but I would just say two things. And the first is that if you want to understand China, you have to go there. I think everybody would agree that. You can't learn it on the news. And the second is that I think there's confusion, maybe deliberately sown, between subsidizing an industry, which, let's face it, every country subsidizes its innovation. You have Horizon here, you have SBIR in the US, you have ICURE in the UK. Government is generally not very good at subsidizing innovation, at picking the winners. If you want an example, Google Solyndra in the US and see what happened to that. There's a spoiler, it's bankrupt. But this is not what China did in 2009, right? There was a policy document from the central government that they would buy electric vehicles for the top 13 tier 1 Chinese cities. Not to subsidize an industry, but to create a market. And what that did was created the market into which competitive companies could come in and innovate. 2009, it wasn't commercially viable, but the government did it anyway. And I think you can draw a direct connection between that initiative and the fact that Chinese EVs right now are a generation ahead of their European counterparts. It was because of that innovative landscape and the market creation. But having said I wouldn't editorialize, I just did. But that brings up the issue of government-market partnerships. And I'd like to ask Dr. Wang, you lead overseas cooperation at one of the most successful regional efforts to generate clusters of innovation. So what's your insight into the potential role of government-market partnerships in the transition to global sustainability, please?
Thank you, Paul. Government-market partnerships, I think, are a very powerful tool to accelerate the transition to global sustainability. Innovation plays a crucial role in sustainable regional development, and it becomes much easier when there is a market to innovate into. I believe most of us here are familiar with the model called triple helix model, which involves university, industry, and government, while the government is typically not a direct source of innovation. We've demonstrated that by funding and establishing an industrial innovation system. It can lay groundwork for research institutions to introduce innovative technologies to the industry. And moreover, it encourages industry itself to highlight its challenges, needs, and thereby motivating and directing the academic research. Today, I would like to use my organization, NICE, National Innovation Center par Excellence example, to detail how we facilitate this acceleration. Since the last decade, we've been dedicated to creating a sustainable innovation ecosystem we call the industrial innovation system. 3 key factors drive this system. The first factor is the R&D institutes. We have established almost 100 institutes in Yangtze River Delta, one of China's richest and most innovative regions, which contributes nearly a quarter of the national GDP. These institutes continuously generate innovative knowledge and produce sustainable technologies. The second factor is the industrial needs. We have developed a unique model for the cooperation of local leading companies by setting up innovation centers within more than 400 companies. These centers are not for producing research. Rather, they help identify technological problems and industrial gaps. Some of the needs can be addressed domestically and others cannot. So here comes the third factor, global innovation network, including more than 80 international universities and institutions in current our system. NICE exists to bridge the global sustainable innovations with market to meet the industrial needs. This ecosystem not only profits Chinese companies by connecting them to the R&D institutes and global resources, but also can benefit our European counterparts. They can leverage this ecosystem for soft landing of global innovations. For instance, we co-invest European startups who would like to explore their business in Chinese market. We insist that the incoming team retains the majority ownership, and afterwards they can profit from commercialization of that technology in the Chinese market. In Europe, while, for example, achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 is a target, Chinese innovations can be advantageous rather than a threat. This approach not only facilitates economic growth, but also promotes a sustainable future for all of us. That's all. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Wang. So, Ms. Nevin, I'm curious, how would you contrast the government role in the EU ecosystem?
I think also in the EU, we have some nice examples of collaboration. There are a lot of programs that are also facilitating the collaboration and the research in the triple helix, like you were explaining before. We have many programs like Horizon programs where we also intended to collaborate also between research organizations, government and industry, and I think it's very important to continue to do so. A little attention point, or maybe even a big attention point, are the elections that are upcoming now in Europe, where we see that there might be much more priority going to defense and other areas. So I really hope that the innovation budgets also for the green objectives also will stay there, because it's very important to continue all the innovation that is needed to reach the green targets. And if we talk about green targets, it's also economic targets, I think, because we have to look at them hand in hand. You cannot talk about economic viability if you don't talk about also sustainability and green viability. So this is really something I think we have to look at. Also, the European and also the national governments, that's also different, of course, in Europe, that we have all our national governments, which have a lot to say and a lot also of things to be harmonized between countries at European level, which remains a challenge, I think, and in which we could do better. But anyhow, governments also are there to facilitate the collaboration and also the way of working through good policies and also, for example, giving permits and establishing the frameworks in which we have to collaborate. A good example, I think, is that at least these objectives have been fixed to be carbon neutral in Europe in 2050. And for example, the ETS credits, the carbon credits, that is a very good instrument, I think, that also initiated a lot of change in the companies, opening up the spirits to see what is possible and also creating then innovation and pathways to go there. Also what we could see, and that's what is happening now, is that also we get more targets, looking at the CSRD requirements, which are, I think, a bit too detailed and giving too much of work to be compliant. But in essence, it's a good guideline, because I think we need to also to establish these objectives, and we also need to work to them. And it also means that we have to look at our supply chains as companies and looking at who are we working with, and are these suppliers also green enough to work with. And this will also influence the global way of collaboration. If we look, for example, to the fashion, to the textile industry, we will see that when companies are working also with Asian counterparts to import textile, there will also be many requirements now to be sure that the material is well used, that there are also good labor conditions and so on. So this will also put another kind of pressure, let's say, but in a good way, also to make also these changes also global. So I think that governments have a really important role to play, but always to balance very well between what they have to put in place and then also looking at not going too far in there to make sure also that people still have freedom to operate within these frameworks. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Tavernarakis, very short time, I'm afraid, but I know Forth has been very successful in Horizon Europe. What would you add?
Well, first let me say that I do understand and appreciate the concerns that were voiced by the ambassador about the recent reservations and reluctance that have been voiced from some European countries at the European level regarding collaborations with China, especially as was mentioned with regard to electric mobility. I think this perceived protectivism is hurting the economies of both China and Europe in the long run. And it will not just hurt the economy, because we should not think just in market terms, but also in terms of innovation and science collaborations. And I think there lies the real issue, in my view, how to establish long-term research and innovation collaborations with China, because there is tremendous potential to be harvested, both at the level of Europe, but also at the level of China. And here, let me tell you a few more specific things about Greece, because I think it's relevant to say that although there is this attitude at the European level, still Greece is maintaining very close ties with China. As you know, Greece is part of the Belt and Road Initiative, and also of many other initiatives that have been established by China with regard to collaboration, for example, with Eastern European and Central European countries. Now, going to your question, Paul, about what Forth is doing, very briefly, I'm sure you're aware, because you have been a pivotal force behind it. Forth has been establishing collaborations throughout China. As recently, a couple of months ago in China, signing an MOU between the Xiao Liverpool University and Forth. This is just one example of collaboration, of fruitful collaboration. I think another example, very prominent example, is our collaboration with the Forbidden City Museum in Beijing, where technology that has been developed here in Greece is applied there, non-invasive technology to clean the antiquities. This is an area we can actually collaborate very strongly, the cultural sector, because we are both countries with rich history and with interest in really developing ways to expose this history and make it more accessible to people. So I will finish that by mentioning that in addition to the cultural sector, I think there's also a lot of scope in collaborating in the biotech sector, biomedical sector, and the agro-food sectors. These are sectors of mutual interest that I think we can build long-lasting relationships with China to our mutual benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. I particularly like the cultural collaboration, because China and Greece are two cultures that go back 3, 4, maybe 5,000 years, and there are very few of those. Maybe you could include the Egyptians, but China and Greece are really on the same level here. We're getting short of time, but Dr. Wang, jittery and nice, I wanted to give you a chance to give us a soundbite in 30 seconds. What would you have the audience take away from this discussion?
Okay. And China and the EU face many common sustainability challenges, such as climate change. Both sides need to achieve carbon neutrality in the near future. So in many ways, I think these two sides can be both markets and technology suppliers for each other. It is also the basis for closer collaboration between these two sides. We, NICE, National Innovation Center par excellence, have already built an industrial innovation ecosystem and to provide September to encourage this kind of collaboration. So I hope we can be a model for the closer collaboration between China and the EU to achieve sustainability. Yeah.
Thank you. So we started with you, Mr. Ambassador, with your opening statements. I'd like to give you the opportunity to give us some closing words to take us home. Ambassador?
Yeah. Global challenges know no boundaries and require the joint response. International cooperation and sharing of the technological advances are more urgent than ever. We are all in the same boat with a shared future. It is unacceptable that certain countries are at the table while some others are on the menu, because no country is immune to the global challenges, even if it has the cutting-edge technologies, and nobody could be deprived of its legitimate right to development. The major driving force for China's innovation is its people's unstoppable aspiration for a better life. It is not driven by me or by you. It is driven by 1.4 billion Chinese people. So the exploration of the insights and the experience of Chinese paths to modernization will certainly inject new vitality to Europe's progress. Thank you, Mr. Paul.
Thank you, sir, for those closing comments. We are all in the same boat. We can talk about this going forward. I hope this will be the start of the conversation. But I'd like to thank Delphi Economic Forum for inviting us, the Chinese Embassy in Athens for their help in organizing this event, the panelists for their very valuable time, and most of all, you, the audience. Thank you all very much.